Hi, it's Paul here from InterAcct. Today we're looking at what's the changes that are made once you've done the update for the payroll for changes for 2026. There's quite a few changes being made in the background, but one of the main things that you'll need to do is once you've got the update, you'll need to check a few things because I need to basically get you to check those pay items, for example, that may need its ordinary timed earnings flag changed. You'll also need to change and set up which gateway you're going to be using for your Superstream and set that up. Put in the details for that if you're using AusEDI. Also check all your super funds that are active and mark them as inactive if you're not using them. And also check that they're linked correctly to your employees because we're going to start using that, if you're not already, to create your super fund files. So it's a good time to go through and check that. I'll be sending you a report on what I find the problems being from previous installs of this update. I found that people have added, for instance, the super funds in twice, and they've put it in the USI one way and then changed it and done a whole bunch of different things. So it's a good thing to do this bit of checking of the setup of the of the super funds, and just check also the employees are linked correctly to those super funds. Okay, so let's go through the first thing, the ordinary timed earnings. So this is a new field that's underneath each of these pay items, and you'll actually see it's off the side of the screen here, but it's actually each of these items here. Let's see if we can move this across. No. So each of these items here have an extra flag on them. And for instance, if we just go to the easy one, say ordinary pay, that's definitely marked as ordinary timed earnings. So ordinary timed earnings are really for anything that's going to attract super guarantee. So it's normally all your ordinary time, excluding your any overtime. So any of the overtime payments should be marked as a no. So I'll just bring up one of these, overtime, time and a half, for example. You can see that's already defaulted to no. If you do pay super on it, you can still select overtime to pay super if you want to. That's this option here. But in terms of the super guarantee, it's not included. So go through your items, and it's mainly these two, the ordinary pay and the overtime, maybe the RDOs as well, depending on what you pay super on, and change those to include those. But you're probably best to have a look at all of them. You can have a look at them all globally. The menu that you might want to use is this pay items database, this one here. And if you go into that and just push enter, again, off to the side of the screen, you'll see that flag, but if you click on them, I can show you that flag here. So ordinary timed earns for that one is marked as a Y, for example. But up to you what you want to change that to, depending on how you're using those particular pay item codes as well. But yeah, the general rule is if it relates to your guaranteed super, then it should be a Y there. Okay, so the next thing that we should really be doing is making sure that you've set up your control accounts and your setup of which gateway you're going to be using for your super. So once you get under here, what you're looking at is the Superstream settings here. Just go through them. So the first one is the Superstream company that you're using, and this is really for the purpose if you're wanting to, for instance, consolidate your payments and your invoices into one account for all the Superstream or all the super companies that you're going to be paying. So it's just a different way of organizing the data as far as the invoices and the payments. Some people like to leave it split up. Some people like to consolidate it. So having that in there will allow you to consolidate. Then underneath each of the employees, you can set whether you're going to be using that consolidated account or you're using the individual super companies that you've got for each of the employees. So we can have a look at that a bit later when we look at the employee setup, but that's what that field's for. Next one down is just the default bank account that we're going to be using for making payments to the Superstream. So when you go through the process of actually making the payment, it will create an EFT in your system, and potentially you could use that to send it to the super company, but it needs to make sure that you have the correct reference numbers for every other line that you're paying. So it's probably suggested, if you're not using Aussie DI, that you probably are not going to send your ABA file or your EFT directly from here, but it will still use InterAcct to record that yes, you have paid it. And the actual payment itself, you might be doing a BPay or something like that, depending on which gateway you're using. If you're using Aussie DI, don't have to worry about that at all. Okay, so the next option is which gateway. So this is the main thing to decide which way you're going to be doing it. I've got Aussie DI set up for my example, but there are alternative gateways. There's obviously, I've sent most people an email about the benefits of using Aussie DI over these other gateways, but they're there and you can use them if you want to do that. Essentially, it's going to be creating a SAF file, and then which is a Superstream alternative file, which is essentially just a CSV file, and you're going to be importing that in, and then they're going to ask to get you to log into your banking and then make a payment to probably a PayID or a BPay or something like that, and that should make your payment. So it just works a little bit more, a few more steps involved in getting the Superstream posted every week, but that's an option if you're wanting to do that. So the other thing is, if you have selected Aussie DI, you do get an option to select the file format and the payment provider. So with the payment provider, I'll just pop into that just for a sec. You have got sorry, not that one. On the payment provider, you have got a few options there. You can use what's called manual, which will bypass the payment system for Aussie DI. But this is something you have to set up on Aussie DI, set up first, and then come here and choose your option of what you've set up on Aussie DI. But manual means that it will send the data through as far as to the super companies, but it will create the references that you need to use for your ABA file. So that will get generated. It will come back into InterAcct. And when you create and update your payment in InterAcct, those references will be used. And then when we export the ABA file from InterAcct, that ABA file, which is to pay your super companies, will have the correct references that match up to what Aussie DI have sent through as remittances to each of the super companies to say, yep, this company is paying these super companies, here's your references, and then your payments will match those references, and that's how it all connects up. But if you're using Zepto, you don't have to worry about creating that ABA file and importing it to the bank and going through that process. You can just get it to directly go through Zepto, which is like Osco, and it as an instant payment. There is a cost to that, but it's depending on how many employees and super funds you've got. It will depend on how much it's going to cost. Okay, so if you need any more details about that option, let me know. But that's all that is. The other thing I wanted to show you in this video is all about the super companies. So if you come back to your menu here, you'll find something that's named like this: super funds and deductions accounts. And there'll be a number of super funds in here, and most of them have been set up. This one, that's just, well, let me just go to one that's been set up already. Or let's put a new one in, eh? So let's add a brand new one, and let's call it the XYZ Super Fund. Okay. So the main thing that you're wanting to do in this record here is enter in the ABA number. So I'm just going to put in an address just for now. And this is what the main thing is, this ABA number. Now, obviously, if you just put in something at random, it's going to tell you it's not a valid ABA number, ABN number, and so you have to actually key in something valid. So I'm just going to clear that out just for the moment. Okay, and don't worry too much about all these other things. It's just the fields that would normally be done on a supplier record. Okay, so once you finish the front screen, it automatically pops you into the second screen. And again, these are important fields. It's suggesting whether it's a normal super fund, an APRA file, an account, or it's a self-managed super fund, which is SMSF. So I'm just going to do, I'm going to do both actually. I'll show you what they both look like. So let's do an APRA. Now, with an APRA, it's going to ask for the unique USI number. So that's a number. It could be letters as well, but that's what that is. And then once you've finished that, the next thing will be asking for the bank. Now, if you're using AussieDI, you won't need to use this. If you're using manual banking and you're wanting to use InterAcct to create the payment, then you probably will need to enter the starter. But I'm just going to escape from here for now. It's actually, there is this other field here. I'm not sure why that's showing there, but there is another field here for if you've got an employer ID that you need to key in. Generally, you don't, but it's there as an option. One of the cool things about some of these new changes is if you don't know the USI number, but you do have the ABN number, you can use this function here to look up the super fund. So if I just pop out of that and just pick up one of these other ones that has got some detail. So you can see here it's already come through what the USI reference number is here. But if we click on this field here, it's going to pop up. So these are the super fund USI codes here. All right, so there's two different ones here. There's an income stream and there's super. So if you're wanting to check whether your employees are correctly set up, what I would suggest that you do, and this will be a new report, is you go to the reports if you need to do that. It depends on how your menu is structured. You might not need to do that. But there will be one that's called Superstream report, which is a global report that you can run for a range. Now, if you're probably best to change it to CBus or something like that as your gateway for now, if you're just doing a bit of a test. But if you run this report, what it does, and it won't give me any errors because there's not much data in this system, but what it will do is it will give you, it will stop on the employees that have got a problem and tell you, for instance, the super fund's not set up properly, or the code doesn't exist anymore, or whatever it might be as the problem of why it might give you an error later. And it's a good thing to do. Doesn't matter the date range and that sort of thing so much, but it's a good thing to do to run this report and check it. If I just pop into an employee here, this is something I did say I was going to show you. If we just pop into my name for a sec and have a look at this, well, you got now super funds as an option here. So you can see that, for instance, I was using this super fund and now I'm using that super fund mainly, but for salary sacrifice I'm still using CBus, so there's a few changes under this area that's useful to know about. And if you look under the employee details, it's changed a bit under here as well, but there's that field that I was talking about before where you can use the super funds company if you want to, for instance, consolidate the data. You can mark that as a Y there and it will consolidate the data to that one super fund. So under here though, this is where it's showing you which super fund it's using. So you can see that I'm using a Hester for most things, and then I'm using CBus for this, So if you want to change it, you can go into here and change it. If you want to add a new super fund, you can come into here and add it in. Now, there is a feature that I haven't I'm not going to release in this version, but I will release probably in the next few weeks, which is all about, I'll just see if the menus, I think the menu will be here for it, this member verification. So member verification, which I haven't really got into, is the idea that on a certain day when you put these details in and it's in new details, it will send a message to the super fund to say, are these details okay? Are they right? Is this valid? Is this account still valid? So that's going to send off, and for the moment, because some super funds won't have that facility available, I'm going to have an option here to say it's all okay, manually, to say, yep, we've verified it manually, validate that the members' details are correct. Now, if there's any changes to the members' details, like the number changes or the USI changes or something like that, it will then generate a new member verification check, send it off, and it'll come back whether it's valid or not. There is a cost to sending those verification checks. It's not much, but it's you should only need it if the super fund changes or you have a new employee, and that's the only times that you use it. I'll go into the member verification changes a bit later in a bit more detail later down the track once all those things are working and I can show you it running through. But that's the main thing I wanted to show you now. Also, the other thing I'll create a video later is on the actual process of doing the new pay runs and how that all works. There's lots of changes there as well. I've got it working a bit more streamlined in terms of making the payment to the employees and also making obviously the payment to the super fund. But I'll do that in another video. All right, have a good day. Bye.